Sleep is absolutely the rising tide that raises all ships.
I had this eureka moment, which was the number one thing I can do to improve my health, my body composition, my sex life, my business performance was to start investing in sleep. It's been a great journey. I spent about $45,000 on my sleep, and it's the last thing I would get rid of. I would literally get rid of my cars. I would get rid of almost every material possession. And the last thing I would get rid of is my sleep setup. I mean, basically, you want to sleep in a cave. You want it to be dark and cold. We all run into trouble when we're not learning how to basically navigate the road of life and shift your nervous system accordingly.
Welcome back to another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is one you're going to want to listen to more than once, and I recommend taking notes because it is chock full of everything, and I mean literally everything you need to know on how to optimize your sleep. I'm sitting down with Matt Gallant, who has built over 13 profitable companies, including Bioptimizers, which he is the CEO at currently, where he makes the world's best supplements. He's got over 15 years formulating supplements, and in this episode, we talk about his journey from working over 110 hours per week, burning himself out, sacrificing his sleep, only having about 6 hours or less of sleep per night, realizing that he was tanking his testosterone, he was reducing his productivity, he was struggling with brain fog and energy issues, and how he rebuilt his sleep back up. He mentions that his sleep system that he uses now is the last thing that he would get rid of because of how important sleep is. So in this episode, we cover the 6 most important sleep disruptors to be aware of and how to optimize your sleep. We talk about different biohacks for optimizing sleep, different supplements and protocols. You name it, it's in this episode. I also recommend taking a look at the show notes because in there you can find discounts to everything that we mention, as well as a whole bunch of things that you can use to optimize your sleep hygiene, your room for optimal sleep. Everything that I know to have better sleep is in the description or in this podcast. Now, speaking of things that will help benefit your sleep, this episode is brought to you by Bioptimizers, specifically their new sleep formulation, Sleep Breakthrough. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it in this intro because we talk about it in the episode, but that combined with Magnesium Breakthrough, which I'm sure you guys have heard me promote, is my 1-2 combo for when I just want to knock the fuck out. I forgot that I could cuss, but this is my own podcast. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So Sleep Breakthrough combined with Magnesium Breakthrough is my go-to for reducing stress, shutting off your brain before bed so you can actually have a restful night's sleep. You can get a discount on both if you use code Captain Morgan and click the link in the description. Next up, this episode is brought to you by Nootopia. The custom nootropics that we talk about at the beginning of this episode, they're constantly coming out with new formulations and they're just top tier. Like if you make money using your brain, you need to be on some form of customized nootropics. That's my personal and professional opinion. I work with clients and we test their specific neurotransmitter imbalances, and Nootopia, based on those imbalances, customizes your nootropic stacks specific for your brain. So they're hyper effective. You can get a 10% discount if you use code Captain Morgan at nootopia.com/Taylor. Next up, this episode is brought to you by Lambs, this EMF blocking beanie that I'm rocking right now. I travel with it and I even sleep with it. I cover it, my head with it, cover my eyes so it blocks out some of the light. And as Matt mentions in this episode, one thing you want to be cautious of is the temperature of your head while you're sleeping, because you want your head specifically to drop by a few degrees in order to fall into deep sleep. I've found with the beanie that doesn't affect my sleep at all. In fact, I actually prefer sleeping with the beanie on. So that doesn't affect me. I sleep with my room at a colder temperature, and I just prefer sleeping with the beanie on because it protects my brain from oxidative stress, from EMFs, and also blocks out any residual light that is in the room. You can get the hookup on the Lambs beanie or the Lambs shirt or the Lambs underwear. I have all of them. If you go to getlambs.com and enter the code Captain Morgan, that will save you 15%. On the same topic of EMFs, Matt mentions in this episode that it's difficult to completely protect yourself from EMFs because they're just everywhere, right? From our cell phones to wireless 5G towers to Wi-Fi routers, they're all over, right? One of my favorite biohacks for protecting yourself from EMFs and just favorite biohacks in general for reducing stress and improving your health is Aries. This little sticker that I've got on the back of my phone, because let's be honest, we have our phones on us constantly. And just by placing this little sticker on your phone, that modulates the chaotic energy from the EMFs and makes them more compatible to the body. So they no longer damage you, which is crazy, right? So all you got to do, put that little sticker on, or I've got this necklace. This is the LifeTune Go. And of course, I double it up with the Lambs gear just for extra protection, especially when I'm traveling. So if you want to get the hookup on that, they make bigger ones for your room, so your whole room can be protected. So instead of sleeping in a Faraday cage, which can be clumsy and not very pretty to the eye, you can just get an Aries device for your room. Luckily for you, you listen to the Captain's Lifestyle podcast, and you can get an exclusive 35% off discount when you use code CaptainMorgan35. Click the link in the description for the exclusive link. Last up, this episode is brought to you by HVMN, specifically their exogenous ketones called Ketone IQ. Why does this pertain to this episode in particular? Well, because as Matt mentions, one of the worst ways to reduce the quality of your sleep is eating a meal before bed. This is because when you're digesting food, that elevates your core body temperature. And as we've already mentioned, you want to reduce your core body temperature before bed. This can be difficult for people, especially if you have cravings right before you go to bed. So you feel like you want to eat. Ketone IQ is what I personally use to knock out those cravings when they occur. So I don't have any food in my stomach. I can eliminate the cravings and sleep like a rock because as Dr. Lat Mansour said on our podcast together, who is the lead researcher of Ketone IQ, ketones can actually help you sleep. They also exert an anti-anxiety effect. They help with body composition and mental clarity and physical performance, a whole bunch of things. So Ketone IQ is turning out to be the next coconut oil, a seemingly cure-all. Of course, it doesn't cure everything, but it has worked fantastically for me personally before bed, in the morning for mental clarity, and before workouts as a performance boost. So you can get the hookup on exogenous ketones at hvmn.com. Use code CaptainMorgan20. That will save you 20%. All right, now let's get into an uninterrupted podcast on everything you need to know about sleep with Matt Gallant. You just said that one of my favorite products from Newtopia is going to be coming out with version 2.0, and that is of the ZAMNER juice right here.
Mm-hmm.
So, you said it tastes better? How can it taste better than this is strawberry flavor?
No,
or watermelon.
The new one tastes amazing. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that is just in our DNA, it's just in my DNA, is just taking things to the next level. And we do that with all of our products. So we're constantly doing experiments, testing. We got 16 full-time scientists, and like we're re-releasing Magnesium, Capex, HCl Breakthrough. Every digestive product's going to be re-released. Every single one is significantly stronger than the previous ones, and we're doing the same thing on the Newtopia front. So yeah, ZAMNER 2.0 coming in December.
Oh man. Okay. I'm excited for that. And by the time you guys are listening to this podcast, this December, correct?
This December, yeah.
Okay. So by the time you guys are listening to this podcast, the ZAMNER 2.0 will be live. So you can click the link in the show notes to get the hookup on ZAMNER 2.0 with the link.
And not only do we do 2.0, we're actually going to have a caffeine-free version. This has a little bit of caffeine, very minimal, but we'll have a totally caffeine-free, so you can use it in the evening and really chill your brain, because the GABA is the molecule of chill, and we've upgraded the GABA so it hits harder.
Oh man, you're getting me all excited. Now I want to spend the whole podcast talking about the new formulation. I mean, I guess we are, because yeah, we got the new sleep formulation that we're going to dive into. But before we do that, I would like to give you a proper introduction, because we've been talking about all these new formulations, and we got to let the listeners know who I'm talking to. So, on the Captain's Lifestyle podcast today, we have Matt Gallant, who is the CEO and co-founder of my two favorite supplement companies, Bioptimizers and Newtopia. He has a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and he's been a strength and conditioning coach for multiple professional athletes, as well as a self-defense instructor, and has over 15 years formulating supplements. That's crazy. Hence why all of the new formulations that are coming. He's also a serial entrepreneur who has built over 13 profitable companies. Matt, how do you do it? I imagine
How do I
sleep
do
plays a
it?
big role.
Sleep plays a major role. I mean, sleep kind of lays the foundation for a great day, both from a physical perspective and a cognitive perspective. During your deep sleep, that's where the majority of your hormone production occurs, testosterone, growth hormone. And then later in your REM sleep, that's where there's a lot of emotional processing as well as neurotransmitter production. So if you're not sleeping enough, or more importantly, if your sleep quality is not good enough, your entire day is compromised. Not only that, they've done the research on one single night of bad sleep, and they found that it activates a whole host of bad epigenetics, including the ones involved in cardiovascular disease, tumors, inflammation. So literally one bad night of sleep will impact your health, and it's measurable. And then of course, over time, talking about longevity, people that don't sleep enough tend to live less long. So yeah, it's critical in the now, and it's definitely critical long term.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people, entrepreneurs specifically, is it that they don't get it, or that from my experience, it's that a lot of them don't like truly do not understand how much of a performance enhancer quality sleep actually is. Like they think that they can get by, with 6 hours or less.
And I was one of them. So in my 20s, this is one of the craziest things I've ever done. I've done a lot of crazy things in terms of health experiments, but I was so obsessed with productivity. I was trying to work 100 to 110 hours a week. That was literally my goal. I had
Wow.
a friend of mine, we used to kind of compete. I was 80 hours in the gym. So I would say productivity, not just work, but 80 hours in the gym, studying marketing, recording a hard rock album, training twice a day. Plus, I was married. So there was no TV in my life. I had very little social life. It was just output. And I had the not so great idea of, let me reduce my sleep by 15 minutes every few days, and I'm going to adapt. And as I adapt, I'll be fine. Well, it worked for a while. I actually felt pretty good until I got to maybe 5.5 hours. At 5.5 hours, what was really interesting was if I deviated any little bit on hydration or on movement or on food, if I ate the wrong thing, I would crash instantly.
Hmm.
And then I kept going. When I got to 4 hours, I absolutely crashed. It took me 2 months of sleeping almost 10 hours a night to recover from that. And then I read a great book called Power Sleep by James Moss. And that was a kind of an OG book in the sleep space. It was written about 20 plus years ago. And that book really sold me on going the other way, sleeping 8, 9 hours a night. The research was compelling. So I started doing that, and I did that for many years. And then I started tracking my sleep. I bought a Zio, which was a predecessor to the O-Ring. It's a headband that you used to wear. Unfortunately, they went out of business. O-Ring came out, and both of them told me that my deep sleep was horrendous. I was getting 0 to 15 minutes of deep sleep. And then I had the highest body fat reading I ever had on a DEXA scan, and I had the lowest testosterone reading I ever had in my blood work. So I had this eureka moment, which was the number one thing I can do to improve my health, my body composition, my sex life, my business performance, was to start investing in sleep. And I haven't looked back. So it's just been a long, interesting journey of investing in new things and compounding things. And I think one of the things people underestimate in general with any health objective or challenge is you want to compound every solution that you can. You've been experimenting with Utopia and the different products. Every single one of those is a stack. Masszymes is a stack. The thing I think we're maybe the best in the world at is creating hyper effective stacks. And we have, again, 16 scientists that are doing nonstop experiments. And we literally test every single raw ingredient. We take the best ones, we start combining them. We combine them with cofactors, and we just keep increasing the effectiveness by synergizing the ingredients. And that's what we've done with Sleep Breakthrough again. So it's been a great journey. I spent about $45,000 on my sleep, and it's the last thing I would get rid of. I would literally get rid of my cars. I would get rid of almost every material possession. And the last thing I would get rid of is my sleep setup. When I travel, it's the thing that pains me the most. However, Sleep Breakthrough and Dream Optimizer have been lifesavers on the road. I had a super crazy 4-city, 5-day trip 2 weeks ago, and I felt great. And I give total credit to the sleep products.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot that I want to get into, namely your sleep setup. Super curious about that. And we can also talk about how to optimize for travel, which now this is absolutely part of my strategy because I've been traveling as well. But yeah, sleep is absolutely the rising tide that raises all ships, isn't it? That's what I always like to say. Because like you mentioned, it affects your sex life, it affects your body fat, it affects your testosterone, it affects your cravings, it affects your mood, it affects your productivity. Like everything suffers when you get lack of sleep. And thank goodness you chose to run that experience or experiment when you were what, mid-20s?
Yeah, I was like 25 at the time. I mean, it would kill me if I tried that today.
Yeah. I used to have sleep issues as well. And this is how I found out about the importance of sleep as well. Because when I was in the Marine Corps, super stressed out, still training multiple times a day, just like destroying my body with cortisol. And the sleep sucked. And at the time, I had no idea. Nobody else around me had any idea of how to improve sleep. So the recommendation is go to the store and get sleeping pills, right? So before we get into the sleep breakthrough and all the things that we can do to optimize sleep, let's talk about some common misconceptions of how to improve sleep. Number one being sleeping pills, which I used to take, and a lot of people out there still take sleeping pills.
Yeah, sleeping pills put you in a zombified state. You're not really getting good quality sleep, which is the main issue with them. So again, you might pass out and stay asleep, but the quality of the sleep is not very good. A lot of them are very addictive, and a lot of them are very difficult to get off of, which is a major issue. So anytime and by the way, in my opinion, melatonin falls in this bucket, which we can talk about. Anytime you use something that's going to directly impact receptors, you really want to think twice, and you really want to create a good strategy around that, because melatonin's the prime example. That is the number one sleep supplement in the world. What most people don't realize is, one, it's a hormone. Two, your body will downregulate as you use it. And a lot of people go from 1 milligram to 3 to 10 to even people are using even crazier dosages. Yeah. What most people don't realize is even 0.5 milligram is a mega dose. Your brain will naturally produce 10 to 80 micrograms naturally. And what we found, and myself included, I actually feel 10 times better if I am going to use melatonin, which is very strategically, very specific times, if I only use like 100 micrograms. And we actually created a spray called Dream Optimizer that has about 18 micrograms per spray. And I'm still experimenting. Like sometimes I'll just do 3 sprays, which is less than 60 micrograms. There's some other ingredients in there that improve sleep as well, and that improve REM. But people are just mega dosing melatonin. There's a lot of research. A few years ago, they looked at a lot of the melatonin supplements on the market. There was a 400x difference between the worst and the best in terms of what was actually in the supplement. So it's a major issue. It is a prescribed drug in many countries, and I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but let's talk quickly about when you could or maybe should use melatonin. One is if you're traveling more than 3 time zones, melatonin for about 2 nights and only 2 nights is a good idea to help reset your clock. And again, a lot of people will report, okay, they felt good the first 2 nights, but on the third night, when they wake up, they don't feel good. They feel hungover. So again, occasional melatonin use is really the strategy. The second time you want to use it is if it's an emergency parachute. So you, for some reason, maybe you're too stimmed, you drank too much coffee, you watched a UFC event, you did something and your
Too much
adrenaline, your
alcohol.
cortisol is elevated. Too much alcohol, you stayed up past your bedtime and your cortisol spiked, which we can talk about because that's really important. Whatever the reason is, the Dream Optimizer, the spray, is a good emergency parachute. Third way, and this is one of my favorite ways, and again, when I was traveling, it was one of the nights in New York, had to wake up. I was only getting 4.5 hours of sleep. I used it because a lot of people have a genetic variant that causes them to wake up about 2 to 3 hours before their normal wake up time when they use melatonin. I'm one of them. What happens is there's a body temperature spike that occurs much earlier than normal, and it causes us to wake up. So I use that as a hack. If I know I'm going to only sleep 5.5 hours, I'll use melatonin because I'll wake up feeling better than I would otherwise. So those are kind of the main instances of using melatonin. One last use case for the Dream Optimizer is if you are using a ton of melatonin, and to me, a ton is anywhere really above 3 milligrams, above 1 milligram, you can use that spray to titrate down and lower your dose progressively back to very minimal. And again, in my opinion, 100 micrograms is a very, very effective dose. And that's why we built the spray so that you can control it. And a lot of times I'll only use literally 60 micrograms and it works very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And just to clarify for people, the Dream Optimizer spray is not available yet, correct?
But by the time the podcast comes out, it might be. It's
Okay.
coming out very, very soon.
Okay. Gotcha. So by the time you're listening to this, maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe it's in there. Yeah. The sleeping pills. Yeah. I always tell people that it doesn't help you sleep. Like you mentioned, the quality is just not there. It knocks you unconscious. Yes. So you're not conscious, but it's not good quality sleep. That's why you still wake up feeling fatigued and tired. And then, yeah, same thing with melatonin. And your pineal gland slows down production, you said, once you take exogenous melatonin. So that's why you don't want to use it on a daily basis, correct?
Yeah. And I've talked to people that use melatonin for a long time and they got off. They told me it takes them about 6 to 8 weeks for them to naturally start producing melatonin again. So I don't have like clinical data on that, but that seems to be what a lot of people report. So yeah, your body will eventually shut down its natural production, especially as you get into these mega doses.
Mm. And I've been under the impression that once you pass the age of 55, natural melatonin production starts to drop, correct? So
Yeah,
in that
sleep.
sense,
Mhm.
in that
Go
sense,
ahead.
would it be okay to use a lower dose of melatonin on a more regular basis?
So first of all, the strategy, and it's true for testosterone production, for an example, and it's true for melatonin. The first strategy that everybody should do, in my opinion, is try to optimize your natural production. If that does not work, then you can always go to the drug option, right? Which, testosterone therapy is an example. So you want to try to extend your natural runway as long as you can. And at some point, you might have to start using melatonin or using testosterone. But I think people underestimate their body's ability to naturally produce these hormones if they're giving it the right nutrients and obviously optimizing the environment. So we can get into that.
Yeah,
Let's start with yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, let's get into how to optimize melatonin naturally.
It all has to do with light. So there's 3 different things we can do with light, which are all relatively free. First one is when you wake up, go outside, direct sunlight into your eyes for at least 10, 15 minutes. For those of you that live in brutally cold climates like I used to in Canada, there is some other options. There's a device called Retimer. It's these weird looking glasses that will shine blue light directly into your eyes. If that's too expensive, you can get the blue light panels, but you need blue light into your eyes within about 30 minutes of upon awakening.
I've
That's
got
a game changer.
the human charger. You know about those earbuds?
Yeah,
Similar to the
same
retimer. Yeah.
same idea. I've used
Do you
those.
know
I think. Go ahead.
do you know how it works in the ears versus in the eyes? Because I've been thinking about that. I mean, obviously your whole body has photoreceptors, but your eyes have the most. So what do you think is the difference?
I think going straight to the eyes is better. Obviously, you're shining light into your brain through the ear canal with the human chargers, and really your eyes are an extension of your brain. So I just think the eyes is better. And again, I own both, and I haven't used the human chargers in a long time. I think the retimers are more effective. And
Mhm.
by the way, the hack for people that want to try to go to bed earlier and wake up earlier is definitely the light. It's the one thing that can help shift your clock. I will say that it seems that people have a genetic disposition to either be a morning person or a night owl or somewhere in between, or to be dolphins. There's a great book called The Power of When. There's a website called powerofwhenquiz.com,
Mhm.
and you
The
can basically
the
do a free
power of
quiz.
winquiz.com. Link will be in
There you
the
go.
show notes for you guys.
Yeah, it's useful. And like I'm a night owl. I mean, I'm a wolf according to their chronotype. And I've tried being a morning person. It's just the pain zone for me. And I'm not saying people can't adapt, but I've tried, and I'm just not wired to be that guy. I'm wired to be in the night tribe, protecting the tribe from the night threats.
Mhm.
That's what I'm wired to do. I love being awake, and it's more of a struggle for me to go to bed than to wake up early. Anyways, so light's critical. That starts your clock. And then about 90 minutes before bed, and this is critical for natural melatonin production, you need to dim the lights. Okay, dim the lights. You can wear blue light blocking glasses, those help as well. But really, it's about lumens. It's not just blue light, and some of the more recent research is indicating that. So whether you turn off all the lights in your house and use salt lamps, or those little motion sensor lights for babies and kids when people wake up at night, you want to be able to see around the house. But ideally, you're really, really diminishing the amount of light in your environment 90 minutes before bed, because what happens is the light will destroy the melatonin in literally minutes. And that's a really important point. When you're taking melatonin, you want to be in bed, lights off, and then you take the melatonin. If you take melatonin and the lights are on, you're going to destroy it, and it's being destroyed literally second by second. So melatonin is really, again, delicate, and it just gets wiped out by light.
Mhm.
So make sure that you're diminishing. And then when you're in your room, you want it to be pitch black. I used to wear an eye mask. The eye masks are good if you're in a worst case scenario. However, there's two major problems with the eye mask. One is your head will get hotter, and all the research says you want your head to be about 1 degree cooler than your body. The other issue is that your skin still has photoreceptors. So if there's light in the room, even if you're blocking it from your eyes, it will still disrupt your natural melatonin production. And that's been shown clinically. So again, absolute pitch black darkness is critical. Those are like just fundamentals that are relatively, again, inexpensive. The only thing that costs money might be blackout curtains for your bedroom.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's what I was going to mention for the lighting. Close the curtains, and then obviously blackout curtains. You can put tape over any like smoke detector LEDs, any sort of LEDs, or unplug everything is best. So then you reduce the EMF exposure as well. But get this, going back to lighting, my buddy's place where I host my in-person men's events, every single light bulb in his house is a red light bulb. So he tests them specifically for what's the measurement of light? Um,
Lumens. A
yeah, but
lumen is how you measure the intensity of light. Yeah. Not
that's
that's not the
was it
spectrum.
Kelvin?
Mhm.
Is it Kelvin? Is that the measurement? Do you remember?
Well, again, I noticed the measurement of light is they call it lumens.
Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, he measures it for that, and then also low flicker. So literally
Mhm.
every single light in the house is red. And you just feel so much more downregulated there because, again, no blue light, no flicker in the light. So then you're not getting stimulated by the flicker of it. And everybody notices an instant difference once there is no blue light, because we take their phones as well. And so it's literally no light stimulation. And it really does make a huge difference. So like you were saying, yeah, get the blue light blockers, install Iris on your computer. That's what I use, a blue light blocking software. There's a phone hack to turn your iPhone screen red, and the links to all this that I'm mentioning will be in the description, so you guys can check that out. All right, so we covered lighting for melatonin. What about foods? Are there any foods that we can eat or other strategies to optimize natural melatonin production?
So the one thing that will consistently destroy sleep quality, I'd say maybe even more than anything else, is going to bed with a full belly. And I've seen that with myself. I've seen that with clients. I mean, ask anybody, like if you have a big meal, I'd say within 2 hours of going to bed,
Yeah,
your sleep is 100% compromised. Ideally, I would say 3 hours before. And some people report like they get even better sleep if they, it's a 4 hour gap or a 5 hour gap between their last meal and going to bed.
that's what I've personally
Ideally,
noticed is the
yeah.
further away from bedtime that I eat, the better sleep that I get. And this is confirmed with my Whoop and Aura data. And I interviewed a sleep expert on my podcast a while ago, and this was his like number one hack, was to eat as far away from bedtime as possible, because it really does ruin the quality of sleep.
Yeah, and food is another circadian signal. So if you're traveling, let's just talk about jet lag really quickly.
Yeah.
Here's a really simple, highly effective jet lag protocol. And this is more like if you're going to Europe, like going to Europe this summer, and I was able to just avoid jet lag completely. So one is like on the plane, let's say you're flying overseas, you want to time your melatonin and your sleep breakthrough dosage, which by the way, sleep breakthroughs is awesome for sleeping on planes. Dream optimizer, sleep breakthrough, you're going to sleep. So I would time it based on when I was planning on waking up, where I landed. So again, I'm starting the circadian, rewiring in the plane.
Hmm.
Typically it's maybe a 10 hour flight, 8 hour flight. So that's the first hack. Second is, again, upon awakening, sunlight to your eyes, but also a huge breakfast and a workout. But a big breakfast is a major signal to, again, start your day. And ideally, it's better to, and there's some really interesting new research on time restricted eating and kind of front loading your calories earlier in the day. And it seems that for health purposes, it's better. So I think for sleep, it's definitely better. But let's talk about what you can take or drink before bed that will enhance your sleep. So serotonin is a precursor, which means it's a building block for melatonin. So anything that increases serotonin is a good move. It's a good idea. Carbohydrates naturally increase serotonin. So a lot of people, and Tim Ferriss has been saying this for a long time, if you take a teaspoon of honey before bed, he reports getting much better sleep. And again, in my opinion, the mechanism there is simply the honey increasing the serotonin in the brain, which then becomes a precursor to the melatonin. So that's a power move. Also, like when I do 3-day fasts, and I've tested this many times, if I have about 10 to 15 grams of carbs before bed, I'll sleep a lot better. I find that as if I'm like on day 2 or day 3 of a fast, my sleep gets shorter and shorter. And, just having like 15 grams of carbohydrates before bed completely changes that. Am I breaking the autophagy a little bit? Maybe, but I like getting good sleep. So there's some things. Now, amino acids will be digested very quickly. It's about 30 minutes. So if somebody's really concerned, like somebody works out late in the evening, which is not ideal,
No.
but they want to drink something to help, them recover from their workout, amino acids is the way to go, not protein, like just straight up aminos. And talking about aminos, in my opinion, the number one amino for great sleep is glycine.
Hmm.
So glycine will help lower your body temp. It actually will help push the blood to your extremities. So back to temperature, we talk more about temp, but glycine is phenomenal for that. Glycine has been shown to improve REM. And here's my favorite feature of glycine. And by the way, when we were formulating Sleep Breakthrough, our goals were fall asleep fast, stay asleep. But here was the challenging one. We wanted to build something where when you woke up, you felt refreshed, you felt rejuvenated. And that's where the challenges were, because there was a lot of sleep molecules that did number 1 and 2. Fall asleep, you might stay asleep, but you'd wake up feeling hungover or drowsy or groggy, or just felt tired. So the glycine has been shown in the research that when people have suboptimal amounts of sleep, they will feel much better the next day. And the thing I'm noticing with the glycine is that it seems to be rejuvenating me over time. I've noticed that I'm getting a new gear specifically later in the day, and it's awesome. So glycine is an incredible amino acid for health, and it's phenomenal for sleep. So 3 grams is what we use in Sleep Breakthrough. Another amino acid is L-theanine. L-theanine has been my go-to sleep molecule for probably about 6 years. What's great about it is your body never adapts. It always works, and it promotes relaxation without drowsiness, which is, again, one of our key goals. Of course, people that are familiar with L-theanine know that it's typically derived from green tea. And the reason green tea is a much smoother caffeine ride compared to coffee is that it just helps counter first of all, it elongates the caffeine effect. It diminishes the spikiness of it, and it's just an improvement. So we use a lot of L-theanine in some of the Utopia products as well. It's great, but it's great for sleep. And let's talk about one of the main reasons why people cannot sleep, which is hyperactive beta brainwave activity.
Well,
So go ahead. Sorry.
before we get to that, let's wrap up the foods that people can eat. So we got honey. That's one of my favorites and one of my recommendations as well. We've got amino acids. Another amino acid, tryptophan. We didn't really talk about that. That's another good one. That's in a lot of sleep formulations. Do you know anything about tart cherry juice? A lot of people swear by tart cherry juice. Is that just because it raises serotonin levels as well, or is there something else in there that plays a role?
There's naturally occurring micro amounts of melatonin. So it is a melatonin source, as well as increasing the potential serotonin in the brain.
Gotcha. And what about kiwi? I've heard kiwi can help also. Do you think that's just because serotonin? Do you know anything about that?
Probably. Again,
Okay.
like any fruits, like I typically have like half a cup of pineapple or a cup of berries. And
Yeah.
I mean, it all seems to do the same thing.
Sweet. Yeah. So just to bring everything together for the listeners, everything we've talked about so far is following my 4-3-2-1-30 method, which is my sleep nightly ritual that I teach. So 4 hours before bed, finish up all intense exercise. Like we mentioned, that plays a role in body temperature and also elevating cortisol levels. The last 2 things that you want spiked before bed. Then 3 hours before bed, finish up your largest meal. Again, because we mentioned the digestive aspect of that, it also raises core body temperature. If you do want to eat before bed, something like a tablespoon of honey or teaspoon of honey, tart cherry juice, amino acids, that works well. And then 2 hours before bed, we already mentioned the light exposure, cut off all artificial blue light exposure, turn on Iris on your computer, wear blue light blockers, turn your phone screen red. Then 1 hour before bed, begin the nightly ritual. And this is when different supplementations come into play. So now we've covered a lot of them already, but let's get into the 6 disruptors of sleep, which this one that you were just about to get into is absolutely one of those.
Yeah. So when they looked at insomniacs, there's 2 key things that they see. One is hyperactive beta brainwave activity. What are beta brainwaves? Beta brainwaves allow us to be alert. Like right now, we're both in a elevated beta brainwave state because we're talking. It's a high performance moment. Now, the problem is if people cannot slow down their brainwaves while they're trying to fall asleep, they can't fall asleep. The pattern is you go from beta down to alpha, which is calm but alert. Then everybody needs to hit theta, which is 4 to 7 hertz. And by the way, everybody hits that twice a day. The first time is that hypnagogic state where you start to dream and you're kind of aware of the dreams. That's theta.
And when you
And
start
then
to
you fall
twitch,
asleep.
that's that moment, right? When
Well,
you
not
can, like,
twitching. You're starting to become aware of your dreams, and again, you could wake yourself up, or you can kind of totally fall asleep.
mm.
So that, and anyways, we're not going to get into brainwave training, but you can train yourself to operate in that state, which is very powerful. Then you fall asleep. And then if you get great sleep, your brain will continue to slow down into delta, which is 1 to 4 hertz. And then you could even go, sub delta, but we'll save that for another show.
Yeah.
Um, so the point is that if your brain is just stuck in beta brain waves, you will struggle to fall asleep, and your sleep quality is going to suck. So here's my suggestions. One is L-theanine and pharma-GABA have both clinically been shown to increase alpha brain waves. And again, I spent about 8 weeks of my life with electrodes. I just did it again like 3 weeks ago. What happens when your alpha brain waves go up is your beta brain waves tend to go down. There's kind of a competition on an electrical level in your brain. So as your alpha rises, your beta tends to decrease, and it basically you feel relaxed. So L-theanine and pharma-GABA are really, really good hacks for basically shifting your brain, start downshifting your brain.
Mm.
For people that really have hyperactive beta brain waves, I would recommend, get neurofeedback. Go do some neurofeedback. It's absolutely fixable. Of course, work with a really good clinician and good neurofeedback facility, but that's a really, really important solution that a lot of people don't even know exists. So I just
And
wanted to mention that.
for people listening who might not know, how can they determine if they're constantly in this high beta brainwave state?
Monkey mind, the hamster wheel, you name whatever animal analogy you want to use.
Yeah.
It's that they can't stop thinking, right? They can't stop thinking. They're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. They're worrying about the fact that they're not going to be able to fall asleep. They're worrying already about how they're going to feel in the morning, that they're going to feel tired. Like when anybody's in that train of thought, they're definitely in a high beta brainwave state, and it's not going to be conducive. Here's a pro tip, by the way, in terms of if you're having those thoughts. One is just to surrender. Like,
Mm.
again, it might happen to me once every 30, 60 days where I'm in bed and my brain's hyperactive and I'm like, okay, it's going to take me 30, 60 minutes maybe to fall asleep, and I'm going to get, suboptimal quantity of sleep. Just accepting that, and also picturing myself waking up feeling refreshed is a game changer. As soon as I accept it, I start relaxing. It's when I'm like, oh man, I can't control my thoughts. I can't slow down. I'm thinking of all these things. When I'm worrying about that, that's creating a second layer of stress, which I just don't need. So that's a really good tip right there.
Yeah, a lot of people don't take that into consideration. They're always trying to, and this goes with anything. This goes with a feeling of cold. This goes with any feeling of discomfort, your legs burning in a workout. Everybody tries to escape that feeling instead of
Mm-hmm.
surrendering to it, being okay and curious about that feeling. So that's the A in the captain's code, is accept the uncontrollable. So the sooner that you can accept and surrender to whatever situation you're in, the more at peace you will be. So specifically to the beta brainwave, the more that you're able to accept that in the moment instead of trying to force yourself to sleep, which absolutely never works. I've been there. I've tried it. It doesn't work. Accept the fact that you're in that brainwave state, and then, use all these hacks that you're learning to reduce the beta brainwaves and increase the alpha brainwaves. But yeah, simply surrendering to it, and instead of what ifing all the worst case scenarios, like what if I can't fall asleep? What if I wake up tomorrow and feel like shit? What if the good stuff? What if I was able to surrender to this? What if I was able to relax? What if I do get good quality sleep, even though it's not the right quantity? What if I am able to wake up feeling refreshed? Just that simple mindset shift could be a game changer.
Something that might sound woo, but and I've talked to a lot of people that have reported the same thing. like literally picturing yourself waking up feeling refreshed
Hmm.
is very effective. And I'll give you another example that's completely different. But some of us sometimes, we have to travel and wake up maybe way earlier than normal. And it's very bizarre. I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes let's say I have to wake up at 4:30. My body, which would never ever happen, will wake up at 4:25, and I look at the phone. I'm like, oh, I guess I should wake up.
Yes.
So again, there's definitely some programmability that seems to be undeniable in terms of how we can program our brain to either wake up earlier or prime itself to wake up in a certain state. So, and have you ever experienced that before?
I almost always wake up before my alarm, no matter what time it's set to. Like even in the Marine Corps, when we would have stupid wake up times, like 2:30, some crazy thing, I would always wake up like right before the alarm, just because I knew like your body knows. So if you have that connection, a lot of times you don't need an alarm unless you're super sleep deprived. Like when I was doing the scout sniper screener in the Marine Corps, it was like 3-4 hours of sleep a night for a whole entire week with a ton of physical exertion on top of that. And one night I woke up at like, I don't know, whatever it was, 2:30, and then I fell back asleep. Thank God my roommate also set an alarm and woke me up, because I was, my brain and body were just dead. They were like begging me for sleep. um so yeah, thankfully there were two alarms. But yeah, if you tell yourself, like you said, visualizing the wake up process, similar to how professional athletes will visualize, different scenarios. And it, well, we won't spend this podcast getting into visualization because that could be a whole nother topic. But yeah, so let's finish up the 6 disruptors of sleep. So we just covered the beta brain waves. We've covered the light. We've covered food. What are the other 3?
Yeah, let's talk about heat. So heat's a major disruptor. I mean, basically, you want to sleep in a cave. You want it to be dark and cold.
And silence.
So and silent. We can talk about noise as well, which is interesting because I live in the city, and we talk about different tools for that.
Yeah.
But heat will absolutely wipe out your deep sleep. And going back to when I was sleeping 9 hours and getting 0 to 15 minutes of deep sleep, waking up feeling like absolute garbage. The main reason was I was sweating 3 to 4 pounds of water where my body was touching my mattress. And my room was cold. It was 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 16, 17 degrees Celsius. And what I didn't realize is, the body heat gets trapped where your mattress is, where you're making contact, and that causes you to over sweat, causes you to toss and turn, and basically your sleep's being absolutely disrupted. So the Chilipad or the Sleep 8 or whatever it's called, those are really good solutions. I'm a huge mega fan of the Chilipad. It's one of the greatest sleep investments that anybody can make, and basically allows you to chill the surface area below your bed sheet, and you can control that. And if you have a partner, you can get a dual and they can control their side, you can control your side, so you get the perfect temperature for your body. And that's a game changer. Like that's maybe a more significant investment, but absolutely worth it. Are you a fan of the Chilipad?
Yeah, I've used it. Unfortunately, I returned it because it didn't get as cold as I liked it. I like it as cold as possible because I'm a very hot sleeper. But yeah, I absolutely recommend the chili pad, especially in the summer months. If you live in a humid climate, it's, I mean, anybody who's ever tried to go to bed hot and sticky, like it just does not, it does not feel good. And you can tell when you wake up the next morning, the quality just isn't there. So yeah, chili pad, huge fan. And then you mentioned the temperature. The ideal temperature range for your room is between, what is it, 62 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Again, you really want your head to be cooler. So, like in my opinion, and by the way, they're V3, so their original chili pad was not as cold. Their V3 I'm nowhere near as cold as you can get that thing. It'll wake me up.
Oh,
So I
wow.
just want
Okay.
to say that they've continually improved their product or their third iteration.
Love it.
But yeah, you want your room to be quite cold, and then ideally use a weighted blanket. And again, I'm from Canada. One of my favorite things growing up, one of the few things I enjoyed about winter was, it was really cold in the room, and you'd be like 5, 6 blankets deep, and there's just incredible comfort. And of course, now you can just buy these really heavy weighted blankets that simulate that.
Hmm.
But yeah, Chilipad, really cold room, weighted blanket. That to me, and a great mattress, which we'll get into next, is the magic formula for me.
And then a couple other things that we briefly touched on for reducing body temperature is avoiding food close to bedtime because digestion raises body temperature, and then also avoid workouts before bed. And if you do, like emergency situation, um, find your core body temperature elevated before bed, either because it's too hot or you did a workout or you ate a meal, a hack that I learned is, like you mentioned, the head needs to be about a degree cooler. I've learned that a damp, cold, or frozen towel or ice pack on the forehead works wonders. Same thing with the palms. Actually, I went to this CrossFit gym in Wisconsin, or no, Minnesota, and they had what are called ice grenades. These little frozen plastic handheld, like little tiny dumbbell looking things. And they would have us hold these in between sets to reduce the core body temperature so we could, go in the workout longer. Have you ever heard of those?
I have, and I've used a couple of other tools. So this is a great track. I've had some of the greatest deep sleep scores of my life using cold before bed.
Oh,
Few ways I've
same.
used it. I have a cryo helmet. So you put this thing in the freezer. They use it a lot for injuries, and we've used it for when we're doing brain training for really, really pushing the limits. But the cryo helmet is one thing I've used. I've also used the cold vests, like the ones where you can put in the freezer.
Yeah.
It freezes the gel packs. You can use that. And I've done ice baths, and I've talked to other people that have done it. And everybody that I know who's used those tools or similar tools have reported just off the charts deep sleep. However, if you look at the research, what's interesting is
It's the opposite.
warm baths, warm baths have very good data as well. So I think, again, maybe depends on the person, but it seems that both warm baths and cold will enhance sleep. And I think it depends on your metabolism. Like if you have a hot metabolism, maybe you're a woman in menopause, or you're a guy with a lot of muscle mass, you're doing a lot of exercise, then cold might work better. And if you're somebody that may be a little running a little cooler, then a warm bath might work. But the data is really, really solid on warm baths. So of course, a warm bath, if you use Epsom salts. Let's just talk about the nervous system real fast and sleep, because we talked about the beta brain waves. There's another way to see this, the big picture. So if you're in a beta brainwave state, you are in fight, flight, or freeze, right? Your nervous system has two components: sympathetic, parasympathetic. So again, beta brainwaves is in the sympathetic zone. In the middle is alpha brainwaves. And then obviously to get to theta and delta, you're absolutely parasympathetic. So the other tool we can use is anything that shifts your nervous system into the parasympathetic zone will improve your sleep. And that's why Magnesium Breakthrough has just been our best-selling product. We have thousands and thousands of people reporting the best sleep of their lives because the magnesium is shifting their nervous system over to parasympathetic. So I just wanted to make sure to really highlight the importance of that. And really anything you can do to shift your nervous system into parasympathetic, whether it's a warm bath, floating tanks, like you name it, it will improve your sleep, almost guaranteed.
Yeah, that's Magnesium Breakthrough has been my number one recommended supplement for that primary reason. Obviously, it's good for a whole host of different, um, you know, functions in the body. It's critical. But what people primarily get it for is that down regulation and the sleep. So if you're listening right now, magbreakthrough.com/Taylor, or click the link in the show notes, you'll be able to pick that up. You include a form of magnesium in sleep breakthrough. So Magnesium Breakthrough has all 7 different bioavailable forms. You've got magnesium bisglycinate in Sleep Breakthrough, correct? Which is the one that's
Correct.
best for sleep.
It's the one that has the best data on sleep. Like when you look at the clinical research, it's got the best data so far. So yeah, that's why we included that. And of course, my stack is 2 capsules of Magnesium Breakthrough, an hour before bed. That's been a go-to since we've released it. And then drink Sleep Breakthrough. And there's definitely synergy between the two.
Mm.
But let's talk about some sleep minerals, because I think the thing that surprised me the most when we were formulating, by the way, we did 55 prototypes, me and Mr. Newts, Mark Effinger. The thing that surprised me the most was potassium. So as we were diving into, and Mark was really bullish on potassium for sleep, and I wasn't familiar with the research, so I started diving into it. I found this really fascinating research on mutant flies. And what they found was that sodium excites neurons and potassium quiets them down. So to me, that was a really big insight. And I think potassium also has some really good heart calming benefits. The other benefit for sleep is a lot of people will report waking up and having to go to the bathroom and obviously disrupt sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, potassium is the molecule of hydration. And most people are really deficient in potassium. They're kind of way off balance, way too much sodium, and
Yeah.
I'm bullish on sodium, so no issues there. It's just the balance between the potassium and the sodium is way off, and when it's way off, you're going to pee a lot more. So if you can increase your potassium before bed, you'll tend to wake up less to go to the bathroom, and again, you'll quiet down your neurons. So that was a really impactful mineral. The next one is calcium. So calcium has good research on increasing REM, and it is also a cofactor for transforming tryptophan, which you've mentioned, into serotonin, which again is a building block for melatonin. Then there is zinc. Zinc is a direct cofactor to melatonin, and it also has a calming effect on the nervous system. And then magnesium is a cofactor for all 3 of those. So
Mm.
magnesium is a cofactor for the potassium, for the calcium, for the zinc. So there's incredible synergy between those 4 minerals, and that's inside Sleep Breakthrough.
All right. So Sleep Breakthrough. Let's go full ingredient list, because we've kind of bounced all over. So it's got glycine, L-theanine.
Three,
I,
mhm.
well, yeah, you go through it.
3 grams of glycine, 125 milligrams of magnesium bisglycinate. It's got the potassium, the calcium, the zinc. It's got a full clinical dose of pharma-GABA, very expensive ingredient, very effective, and 200 milligrams of L-theanine. So those are all the sleep components. And by the way, like, we added a lot more, and what we found was we just didn't feel good when we woke up. We ended up kind of pulling a lot of things back, and this is what we ended up with, and it's working incredibly well. On the flavoring front, and we're really proud because we just use blue spirulina, which gives it this gorgeous blue color. And by the way, people like to throw the word superfood around. There's very few superfoods. To me, my definition of a superfood is something that has an additional health benefit beyond the macro and the micronutrients. Spirulina is one of those. There's some really interesting research on stem cell stimulation from blue spirulina. So blue
Mm.
spirulina is an incredible nutrient, incredible food, really. And then we use organic grape, organic berry, some stevia, and basically that's it. So it's this incredibly clean formula. There's nothing weird. There's 0 chemicals. Everything is natural. It's basically amino acids, minerals, and natural flavoring. So yeah, you drink it about an hour before bed. You'll feel it within about 15 minutes. One of my favorite parts is that within 30 to 45 minutes, I pretty much have to go to bed. And for me, again, I like staying awake. So just wanting to go to bed is a big win, because I can easily stay up and work and do all kinds of things. So, if I don't go to bed, I'll tend to pass out on the couch, which I've
Mm.
never done before, which is great. And that's it, so it's a very
Yeah.
clean, simple formula, but incredibly effective.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be effective, because literally everything from Bioptimizers is like my favorite supplement. And bringing it back to the beginning, the fact that you guys are coming out with new formulations for everything, like, I'm stoked for that. But then also you made this taste delicious, because till this day, The worst thing that I've ever tasted, and this is even after 4 years in the Marine Corps where I tried some pretty crazy things, is magnesium glycinate. The worst flavor I've ever had. So the fact that you guys were able to disguise that in something that tastes so freaking delicious, and I nailed the flavors, by the way. I knew it was berry and grape. So thank you for
Good palate. Good
yes,
palate.
yes. It's delicious. So that was just like the next level of, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So and then what do we have in the what's it called? The Dream Optimizer. What's in this? What are the ingredients in that?
Yeah, so Dream Optimizer is a completely different product design. Again, we wanted to have a controllable melatonin dose for, again, all those situations we talked about. So it's 18 micrograms per spray. So that's the first key ingredient. The second key ingredient is California poppy seed extract, which has
Mhm.
really good research on increasing REM. Everybody reports that when they use Dream Optimizer, my wife included, we just used it 2 nights ago. We both, your dreams are way more vivid. You're way more, it'll extend your REM. There is tryptophan. So tryptophan was weird on paper when you're looking at the precursors to melatonin. Tryptophan makes sense, but when we did it in the powder or in the pills, it never worked. And I've been trying to make tryptophan work for literally years. However, in the spray, it seems to work really well. And then again, there's some other cofactors to help convert the tryptophan into melatonin. So it is, again, an occasional use. Like one of those bottles might last you 2 or 3 months. It's got a really long duration because you might only use it 2 or 3 nights a week, and it's awesome. And you can combine both. Again, if I'm flying, I'll use both. I'm not going to risk it. I just want to knock myself out.
Mhm. Sweet. Yeah, I've loved the combination, especially for jet lag, like we talked about, because I do travel a lot, West Coast, East Coast, so that occasional low dose of melatonin. And when we say micrograms, we're talking like, you see the lowest that you'll probably find in the store is 1 milligram. We're talking less than, 0.5 milligrams, right? So it's a
Well,
very
even, yeah, like the lowest dose you'll tend to find, like in any pill, is 0.5 milligrams. That's still a mega dose. That's 500 micrograms.
yeah.
And that's why we went with the spray so that people can control. And some people might feel awesome with 8 sprays. I feel great typically with 4 sprays. It doesn't take much, and 4 sprays is actually around 55 micrograms of melatonin. It's a very, very minimal dose.
Love it. So now let's talk more about why more sleep is not necessarily the best remedy for energy and productivity. Because I talk with a lot of people who don't get good sleep, who think they do simply because they're sleeping 7 to 8 hours, but they're still tired and they're wondering why. So explain to us the importance of REM sleep and deep sleep and why more sleep is not necessarily better and how we can optimize for, well, this is a separate question. Let's start with the first one, why more is not better necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, back to my story. I was getting 9 on paper. The reality was my sleep was garbage, and it showed up my body fat, my hormones, how I felt. It was really, really bad. So sleep quality trumps, like, I think you're better off sleeping 7, 7.5 and getting really good quality compared to sleeping 8.5 or 9 and not getting enough quality. Let's talk also. So what's really interesting about longevity research and sleep is that people that sleep 6 hours or less have a shorter life. And then also people that sleep too much have a shorter life. I think it's very different mechanisms. I think people that are sleeping 6 hours or less are just not recuperating, not rejuvenating themselves. They're not, repairing their bodies on a consistent basis. So they're just going to die earlier. But the people that are sleeping too much, and I had a friend in my 20s that, was like that. And fortunately he died in his 40s from a brain tumor.
Mm.
Not saying the two are linked, but he was a guy that could, he was kind of trapped in a parasympathetic state. And in my opinion, People that are sleeping too much are typically very unhealthy.
Hmm.
And what I've noticed in myself and other people, and you've probably seen it as well with your clients, is that as people get healthier, they tend to sleep a little bit less. Like right now, my average amount of sleep is 7 to 7.5, and I feel way, way better than I ever did on 9. And even sometimes I'll sleep 6, 6.5, and I feel way better than I did on 9.
Yep.
So definitely, as I've gotten healthier, I've noticed that I need less sleep. Just some quick comments on people that train really hard. So again, when we used to work with pro athletes, the formula that I was taught that I used was 8 hours plus 1 hour for every hour that they trained. So some pro athletes will train like twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And typically you have to schedule naps to get that. It's very difficult to sleep like 10 hours straight.
Hmm.
But you know, people that train very hard, I notice even myself, like if I go do a really hard squat workout or deadlift workout, I'll probably need an extra hour that night. Whereas if I'm not doing that, I'm fine. So
Hmm.
there's some variables there, but it's definitely all about sleep quality. So for deep, 90 minutes is a really good target. And for REM, 2+ hours. Those are really good baselines. Some people have, again, just genetically blessed, and they might, see some crazy results. One quick comment on Oura Ring data and sleep. So Oura Rings and Fitbits and all of those devices are only about 60% accurate in terms of measuring the specific amount of deep and a specific amount of REM. And the reason is they're using secondary metrics. The only way you can get really accurate sleep data is you need electrodes on your brain.
Hmm.
There is a headset called Dream, DREEM. I bought their first version when it came out, and unfortunately, they've become a research-only company. We're actually using their headset to do some sleep studies on Sleep Breakthrough. But you need electrodes. So again, the Oura Ring is estimating how much deep, how much REM based on heart rate and body temp and movement and all of those things. And it's still good. I'm not downing it. I've been a fan of Oura Ring since V1, but it's just not something that you want to get overly obsessed about on, oh man, it's only saying I got 30 minutes of deep and I got 3 hours of REM. Because, for a while I had the Dream and the Aura and it was contrasting the two. And it just wasn't accurate at assessing the specific amount of time in deep or REM. What it is accurate at is that block of time of REM plus deep seems to be accurate, but it just can't differentiate accurately between the two.
So you're talking about, if I understand this correctly, you're saying that Aura Ring and most sleep trackers like Whoop, for example, they
Mhm.
won't necessarily get the amount of deep versus REM correct, but the total between the two is relatively accurate.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
I've talked to other people that had the Dream and the Aura, and they reported that. I've talked to neuroscientists, like across the board, it seems to be that's the consensus.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And then also something to mention, like you said, professional athletes, we often hear about athletes, getting 10, 11, 12 hours of sleep, these super high level athletes. And then some, I'll say, average or non-athletes sometimes brag about getting that much sleep, but then to your point, that's not necessarily healthy. Sleeping more is more often than not correlated with not non-optimal health. Correct?
Yeah, I think it's the non-optimal health that's driving them to sleep that much.
Yeah. So
So,
unless you train, like work your fucking ass off, and you'll know if this is you, then if you're getting 10 plus hours of sleep, it's probably a sign that something's off.
mhm.
Cool.
Let's talk about homeostasis real quick, which is a really important concept, both for people that are sleeping too much or people that, sleep 5.5 hours a night and they brag.
Hmm.
So your body's always attempting to achieve homeostasis. It's basically trying to balance itself out to whatever circumstances you're putting it in. And yes, if you're constantly sleeping 5.5 hours and you're waking up and you're using coffee and stimulants to kind of wake up and function,
Yeah.
even though your functioning is at about 50% of your true potential. You basically adapted to that, and it's not a good thing. And I think the same thing is true with the people that are sleeping 10, 11, 12 hours. Like they're the people that I've known that are in that camp are basically trapped in a parasympathetic state. Kind of again, and you can get trapped. I've been trapped in a sympathetic state, and that's how you burn out, right? You just can't downshift, and you just get worn out, and then you burn out, and then you
Hmm.
need, to basically completely reboot for a while. But the same is true on the other side. Like the people that are just too chill, they need some nootropics. Basically,
Yeah.
they need some adrenaline. They need to go work out. They need some stimulation. They need to try to shift their bodies, because in a perfect world where, waking up, I think waking up and spending 20, 30 minutes in a calm brainwave state, hang out with, like, I've got a baby girl now, 6-month old, love hanging out with her, not turning on the phone. I mean, keep it in airplane mode, go outside, walk, meditate, whatever your rituals are. And then you basically say, okay, I'm going into beta brainwave mode. You operate in that. And then in the evening, shift down, take magnesium breakthrough, meditate, do whatever you need to do to shift your brain and your nervous system back to calm. And then you have a good night's sleeps. We all run into trouble when we're not learning how to basically navigate the road of life and shift your nervous system accordingly.
Yeah, we talked about in our last podcast, when we recorded on Newtopia, how most people's cortisol is opposite. It's low in the morning, so they need liquid cortisol, aka coffee, to wake them up to function. And then their cortisol is super high in the evening, so they got overactive beta brain waves and they can't fall asleep, and it's all thrown out of whack. So here's my morning ritual that I use and that I teach. It's called the Cages morning ritual, and it fits everything from my understanding. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this from a cortisol optimization standpoint and a circadian rhythm optimization standpoint, as well as starting your day off on a productive foot. So each letter stands for something. The C is cold exposure. So bare minimum, take a cold shower. That will raise your core body temperature first thing in the morning, will wake you up. Then we've got affirmations. So as we talked about earlier, having the positive, mindset, saying specific phrases to yourself. Then we've got G, which is growth. So learning something first thing in the morning, as opposed to scrolling your phone and making sure you still have got all the same problems. You check your email, you're still stressed out about all the same work problems. It's not the way you want to start your day. Learn something when your brain is in that state is the best time to really reprogram your mind. And then we've got the E, which is exercise or just movement, getting some form of light movement in the morning. Doesn't have to be a full workout, but stretching routine, yoga flow, morning walk. And then most importantly, sunlight. And then you can combine those things, walk in the sunlight, grounded also. So that's what I teach to optimize your morning. Am I missing anything?
I think that's the ultimate. But I just want to wrap up on the sleep disruptors, because there's two we didn't cover, and you're queued it up for me. So let's talk about consistency and timing for bed, because most people have heard that 1 hour before midnight is worth 2 hours. And that's something I used to hear, and it just sounded like, your grandma saying. However, it's accurate. And the reason it's accurate is, let's say your target bedtime and your usual bedtime is midnight. Typically, you'll start yawning and feeling maybe a little bit tired an hour before. Again, your brain is starting to prime you for bed, especially if you're doing all the things we're talking about. Now, if you stay up past midnight, your body will produce a big cortisol spike. And I think it's just evolutionary biology, because obviously, if we needed to stay awake to protect the tribe, we needed to stay awake to survive. And of course, a lot of people get addicted to the cortisol. Cortisol can be addictive. And I used to be definitely a cortisol addict. I mean, I used to love that. I mean, I used to work till 2, 3, 4 a.m. I just used to love that jolt, and then just keep working and keep going. And again, it wasn't very good. So once you start yawning, again, that's a key signal, and you can override that. I mean, again, you're binge watching Netflix or doing some other things, playing video games, whatever it is that is giving you stimulation. You can override your bedtime, and then you're going to get that cortisol spike,
Is
and
this
your
that
deep sleep is going
second
to be
wave?
massive.
Is
It
this that
is. It's your
second wave that
second
a lot of
wind.
people? Okay, talk about that.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a
your
little
second
lag
wind.
between.
Yeah, sorry. So your second wind, it will definitely disrupt your deep sleep. It will definitely disrupt your hormone production, and you're not going to feel anywhere near as good the next day. So that's a really, really critical sleep disruptor is consistent sleep timing. Again, around the same time, make sure that you hit that. So that's a big one.
And before we hit the last sleep disruptor, optimal melatonin production is between the hours of 12 and 2 for most people, correct? So you want to be asleep by that block of time.
Yeah, and again, it depends on your chronotype. It just depends what you've wired your time and how you're using light.
Mm,
But essentially, if you stay up too late, your melatonin production, your hormone production, your whole prolactin cycle is going to be disrupted.
okay, got it. So then last sleep disruptor, and then we'll do a recap of them.
So the last sleep disruptor is body pressure, which is different than heat.
Hmm.
So when I was on my journey of investing in different sleep technologies and different things, obviously mattresses came up. And what I didn't realize was that if blood flow gets constricted anywhere in your body will toss and turn. It's obviously a natural self-defense mechanism because blood being constricted for too long in an area is not healthy.
Yeah.
So the ideal sleep position is on your back for two reasons. One, again, ask any chiropractor, they'll tell you it's a nice natural realignment of the spine. And two, you're spreading your body pressure more evenly. There's more pressure that's basically taken on the weight of the bed. But for some of us, we're side sleepers. I'm one of them. If you're a side sleeper, you almost absolutely need a memory foam mattress. You need to sink in. The wider your shoulders are, the softer your mattress needs to be. The heavier you are, the softer your mattress needs to be. The shorter you are, the softer your mattress needs to be. And obviously the opposite is true if you're taller, if you're lighter, or if you don't have if you have narrow shoulders or narrow hips, if you're a woman, you don't need as soft of a surface. You can basically go with a denser memory foam.
Mm,
My mattress of choice is Essentia. It's a Canadian company. The reason I picked them is they have different densities, so you can really pick the right mattress for your body. They actually produce custom made ones called Procores, where they'll customize your side and your partner's side. And the main reason I picked them is that their memory foams are made out of a tree sap, which doesn't off gas for 6 months.
yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of Essentia. I think it's a great company. Jack's great, and it's just a great product. And I tested their newest material at Dave Asprey's last event, and they're just taking it to the next level. So huge fan of Essentia. And again, there's a lot of mattress companies. There's a lot of them I haven't tried. I can't say they're great or they're bad, but make sure that if you're a side sleeper, you want to get the right density for your body, and you want to sink in so that the body pressure, the pressure per square inch from your head to your toes is as even as possible, and you're going to toss and turn a lot less.
Yeah, I'm glad we brought that up. That's a good point that a lot of people don't consider. Another thing to mention is if you are a mouth breather or a snorer, if you wake up with a dry mouth, those are all signs that you breathe from the mouth. Or if you get heartburn, it would help if you slept on either a wedge pillow or you elevated your bed a few degrees. And then also I like to sleep with a neck pillow instead of a regular pillow, because a regular pillow has the potential to, kind of crush your windpipe like that. I just sleep with a neck pillow a lot of the time, so it keeps my spine in that straight alignment. I found that to help out a lot. So that in combination with the elevated torso part of your bed, in addition to mouth tape too. That's another good hack worth mentioning. You said that mattress doesn't off gas for 6 months. Does that mean that it starts off gassing after 6 months?
No. I mean, again, most, I don't want to name brands, but almost all the memory foam mattresses out there use um, petroleum-based products to produce
Right.
their mattress, and there's just a natural off-gassing that takes like 6 months to get rid of. Whereas
Oh,
Essentia,
okay.
it's zero from day zero, and there's no issues.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's an important topic. Especially in the bedroom. Um, we can cover VOCs just briefly. So volatile organic
Mhm.
compounds. Why does that matter? Why should people care about that in their mattress and pillows?
So I'll give you a story. So we have a client. He's one of the top power players in Hollywood, and we've been working with him for a few years. And he built two new homes, one in Bel Air and one in Palm Springs. Incredible houses. And there was so much basically off gassing that happened that when he got his blood work, his rubber levels in his blood were off the charts. If I would have, frankly, before I saw the blood work, I would have never guessed that it would be that demonstrable, that you could see it in the blood work the way it showed up. And what happened was it triggered this hardcore histamine response that took us a long time to resolve.
Mm,
So there was some genetic epigenetic activation that seemed to happen from all the gases and rubbers that were in his body. And we're talking, this stuff is in the air. It wasn't like he was eating rubber, it was just breathing it in, and it was accumulating, and it triggered this crazy histamine response that took us a while to resolve. But yeah, off gassing is real. There's no zero doubt about it. One of the other things in terms of air quality in your room is obviously there's a lot of good um, devices you can use in your bedroom. My friend Michael has a company called Jasper. It's used in a lot of medical offices, and it's a little more pricey, but it's quieter and does a really good job. And let's just talk about noise really quickly.
yeah.
So if you're in a city, you got two options. Either A, you embrace white noise. So I run an AC, I'm running the Chilipad, and I'm running an air purifier. Those three give me an awesome white noise. I can't hear anything. I mean, you can whatever can go on outside and I can't hear it. Or you can use earplugs. The best earplugs, in my opinion, are Max. Max is like a putty that you put on top of your ear canal. It's not inside your ear canal. And what I like about using earplugs in general for sleep is that you're hearing your breath. And I
Mhm.
find that your breath becomes hypnotic and it really shifts your brainwave rapidly. So I think that it's not just noise suppression, but your own breath is almost like hypnotizing you to sleep. So those are some good noise solutions. And again, air purifier is a good answer. It's a good solution for a bedroom.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well because I sleep with earplugs. Uh, I I like, in addition to the noise canceling, from all the outside noise stimulus, I like it. It feels more like I'm able to, be present in my own body. Like you mentioned, the breath. It feels like I'm just closed off from everything, and it's just me. In addition to, the blackout curtains, and sometimes I'll sleep with an eye mask. Um, yeah, I like that. Especially if I'm in the city. Sometimes I will use, pink noise, I've heard is more effective than white noise, so I'll combine pink noise with binaural beats, um, and that is a fantastic combination. If I want a little extra help falling asleep, I found that to, or if I've got the overactive beta mind, I've found that combination to be able to get me into more of a relaxed state. Have you played around with, I'm sure you have, binaural beats?
Yeah, so binaural beats is an entrainment technology. It basically, again, it will shift your brain waves from beta down to alpha or theta. Ideally, really the ideal brain waves for sleep would be theta. So if you can
Mhm.
shift your brain waves down, and typically you can find binaural beats that have these different frequencies programmed into it, and it entrains your brain. It's basically hitting your brains with different cadences of frequencies, and it just naturally shifts it down. So yeah, absolutely. For those people that again have the hyperactive beta brainwave train going, it's a good solution.
Mhm. Nice. I personally use the Sleep Stream app is my go-to. Brain FM Brain.fm is another good option. And then with this, it's worth mentioning that ideally you'd want to use headphones so you can hear, the two different frequencies in each ear. That's how binaural beats work, is the difference between the frequencies. And then also, if you could use wired headphones, that would be ideal. So then you don't get the Bluetooth EMF radiation. So now let's talk about EMF's effects on sleep quality, which is something that a lot of people don't consider. Sleep with their phone right on their bedstand, not on airplane mode, their Wi-Fi routers on. Maybe they live in a city with a bunch of 5G towers around. So how can EMF affect sleep, and what are some hacks for that?
So I sleep in a Faraday cage. I have a $2,000 silver net. It looks like a mosquito net that I sleep in. And frankly, it had zero impact on my sleep scores. I'm not saying that EMF does not affect sleep. I do believe, having looked at different people, different clients, that it seems that some people are more sensitive to EMFs than others. One thing I've noticed, specifically with the Oura Ring, which is obviously directly on your skin, that if I don't turn on airplane mode, it seems to impact my sleep. So the thing with all these devices, whether it's Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, et cetera, proximity matters. I mean, the closer you are to these devices, the more impact it's going to have. So again, I'm in a penthouse. I probably see about 8 or 9 different Wi-Fis, but I've got cement floors, cement walls. Frankly, I don't think a lot of it's hitting me. It's probably why I didn't see a big improvement in sleep quality. So yeah, I mean, ideally, I definitely put my phone on airplane mode. I definitely put my Oura Ring in airplane mode. But a lot of times, for those of us that live in cities, we can't avoid these signals. They're just all around us, and I don't get too paranoid about them. One of the potential answers to EMF is magnesium. So what we know about EMF is that it opens up calcium channels inside the cells. There's basically an overload of calcium in the cells, and obviously magnesium binds with calcium and can help counteract basically an excess of calcium in the body. So in my opinion, magnesium is a really good potential antidote to EMF overload. And yeah, just managing your EMF signals is a smart move.
Nice.
But I'm not too paranoid about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, the magnesium is one of my travel hacks. I take it every single day, but especially when traveling for that reason, because when you travel, you're just being bombarded by excess EMFs in the airports and then in the plane as well. So yeah, taking the magnesium can not only downregulate you, but as we just learned, also mitigate some of the damage from EMFs. Let's talk real quick on how to hack it if you are getting less sleep. Like if you're an entrepreneur and you got to pull a late nighter, or you're traveling and you're only going to get 4 hours of sleep before your meeting, what are some ways to make that the best quality sleep of your life, or that you can in those short duration, and then wake up the next morning and still be as on as possible?
Yeah, I just went through that. Like I said, 4 cities, 5 days, including some 4.5-hour nights. So one is use Dream Optimizer. Those nights where you're not going to get that much sleep, it's incredible for that. That's one. Two, again, get the sunlight. Do the captain's protocol in the morning. That's critical. So there's interesting research on exercise and sleep deprivation. You are better off training even if you're sleep deprived. It will actually help kind of regulate your body and get you into an optimal zone. And nootropics, Newtopia. I mean, if you're not, one of our sayings is hashtag no bad days, and it's accurate. Like if you have those days where you woke up and you're tired, maybe you're exhausted, you can use Newtopia to get out of that. You can use Newtopia to have a really good day. And one of the things about feeling worn, so magnesium is incredible for not just sleep, but if you're feeling a little bit worn and kind of on the edge of burnout and you're just stressed out, magnesium is great. So you can use like maybe 1 capsule with the nootropics, and the magnesium will help smooth out the edges that you might be feeling, and then obviously the nootropics will help stimulate your brain. So those are my go-tos. We're actually. Do you want a world debut? You want a premiere? You want a big hint? Something
Always.
coming up?
Let's do it. I was already blown away by all the new formulations, and now you're gonna drop something else. So let's go.
Man, we've got I think 25 things in prototype mode and in the can coming. Yeah, so we have the ultimate adaptogen blend coming. It's 17 different herbs. It's phenomenal. So I've been using it for a while. We don't have an official name for it, but it's coming soon, and that's a go-to for me. Like the days we've been testing it with like triathletes the day after a race. They'll take this formula along with some CBD. So CBD is another really good tool
Mhm.
if you're feeling fried. And CBD is essentially any cannabinoid is essentially a painkiller. So CBD, magnesium, and its adaptogen blend will get you out of the pain zone. It just will. And then you add the nootropics on top of that, and boom, your brain's performing. So that's my go-to solutions for those suboptimal sleep days.
So is this adaptogenic blend going to be significantly different from Collagenous? Because you've got some adaptogens in there.
Completely different.
Okay. Wow.
Completely. Yeah.
This is why Newtopia and Bioptimizers are my favorite supplement companies, because it literally, you guys have something for everything. Everything,
That's the
right?
goal.
You
That's the
you
goal.
fix digestion with most of the Bioptimizer supplements. I use what I call the digestive SWAT team: hydrochloric acid,
Mhm.
masszymes, and then the P3OM, and then gluten guardian and blood sugar breakthrough on, when you've got a little extra carbs or you're going to consume gluten. And then the leaky gut guardian, I take that in the morning, or no, now it's biome breakthrough. Um,
Mhm.
so I've got something for every digestive, you know, problem, right? Then we've got magnesium breakthrough, which plays a role in over 400 different enzymatic functions. So that's just a no-brainer. Of course, we're going to be taking that. We already mentioned that it's good for testosterone, sleep, stress reduction, all these things. And then we've got Newtopia. So optimizing your brain as well. One of my favorite stacks, if I know that I'm going to get less sleep and I wake up feeling a little groggy, um, if it's not a hyper productive day, then I'll take mental reboot. I found that one, specifically the AM version,
Mhm.
just clears out the fog. Like, it's crazy. I didn't think it would work that well. It I actually take the PM version in the morning as well. Let me get your take on this. It contains vitamin D, which is also a hormone. So if you think about it, I want to hear why you chose to formulate it in the PM version. I've heard that if you take vitamin D in the evening, it can have an effect on circadian rhythm, because you think evolutionarily you're only getting vitamin D in the morning and afternoon, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, that was Mark's creation. Vitamin D is such a critical cofactor to so many things. But I'm with you on Mental Reboot AM. I mean, that's one of my favorites.
So
Reboot
good.
AM, even in the afternoon, is yeah, it just gives you that acetylcholine base that you need for focus, and yeah, it just clears out the cobwebs. Like that's a staple for me. Almost, I use it almost every single day.
Sweet.
So it's phenomenal for that.
Cool. So just to wrap up on this, if you get a night of bad sleep and you want to perform, my go-to is the mental reboot, the Call of Genius. I love, on those types of mornings, because you want to avoid overstimulating. So what most people do is they'll just reach for another cup of coffee, which, as we already talked about, is one of the last things you want to do, because for cortisol, and then also you want to optimize sleep that evening, which caffeine reduces sleep quality. So I'll opt for the Call of Genius. Um, and then, yeah, it just depends on what else is for the day. If it's a social situation, I'll take Upbeat and ZAMNER if I'm, doing a podcast as well. So there's stacks for everything. Last thing I want to get into is your sleep setup. So I'm sure we covered a lot of it already, like the Faraday cage, the Chilipad, the specific mattress. What else do you use for sleep setup?
Let's talk about what I don't use. So I spent probably about plus maybe even $10,000+ on PEMF devices. And, the theory was get the right frequencies for your sleep and maybe you'll get a better sleep. I tried the Earth Pulse, the Beamer, the Delta Sleeper. The Delta Sleeper was the best of the lot. It's this little device, costs about like $400. You put on your brachial nerves, you push a button, and it only pulses for 15 minutes. It sends a delta frequency through your brachial nerve. That one was the best. But the Beamer, the Earth Pulse, and every single other ones that I tried, including some that would sync up with your brain and then send delta pulses while you're in deep sleep, they were all hit or miss. So I cannot recommend any PEMF device for sleep. I don't think they're there yet. I think they're promising, and maybe with some more innovation, they'll get there. In terms of other things we didn't talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
What about grounding mats? Have you played around with grounding mats?
I have. I did from day one. So it seems like, again, I'm 20 floors in the sky. It seems like the way to make a grounding mat work is to directly, like, to plug in the ground.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. I mean, again, I think if you had a legitimate grounding setup, that it should improve sleep.
Okay. That's what I've noticed
again,
as well. Because going back
yeah, go
to my buddy's place in Minnesota, it's a full biohacked house. Every single light bulb is red. We minimize EMFs. We've got grounding rods actually placed in the ground with a copper wire with a strap that goes on you while you sleep. And I do notice great sleep there. I've tried a plug-in grounding mat while I've slept, and I haven't noticed any difference from that, or in my sleep scores as well. Like no change in data, but with the actual grounding rod, like you mentioned, I did notice the benefits of that.
And just to add to that, I can clearly recall how I felt upon awakening camping. And obviously when you're camping, one, you're grounded because you're even though you might not be directly on the ground, the humidity between your body and the sleeping bag is obviously going to ground you. Two, you're breathing in oxygen, and three, you're not getting these blue lights. And I just remember waking up and thinking, holy moly, I feel incredible, right? So yeah, I think grounding is potentially effective, but again, I bought all the grounding sleep sheets and stuff and never saw an improvement. Here's the last piece I'll give you that is expensive, but in my opinion is a very good nervous system solution, and that's the NanoV. So NanoV has 3 different levels. Like the top level is 15 grand. If you use that device it depends on the person, their newer version is stronger, but 60 to 90 minutes, you will shift your nervous system. You will shift to parasympathetic. So it's a cool tech. You can be kind of watching TV and running and breathing these biosignaling molecules that supposedly repair DNA and do some other really beneficial things. But in terms of preparing you for sleep, it does shift your nervous system. And I know there's people that love the new calm, again, for similar reasons. It shifts your nervous system. So any technology that shifts your nervous system into parasympathetic will improve your sleep. And I mean, one of my favorites that I don't have at home, but when I travel, like when I go see Wade in Venice, I'll go and do that, is floating. I think floating is one of the most to me, like in terms of parasympathetic healing, recovery, I don't think anything beats it. I mean, your nervous system is being completely rebooted because of the absence of stimulation, the light stimulation, the kinesthetic stimulation, the sound stimulation, and you're absorbing magnesium, and your brain waves will shift into theta. And so just this reboot. So sometimes I might fly to LA. It's a 7-hour flight. I feel a little fried. Go float at Float Labs on Venice Beach. 90 minutes. I just get out. I just feel completely refreshed and I feel great, and I'll get a great night's sleep. So yeah, again, whatever works for you for shifting your brain down, but that would be the last one. So custom made mattress, NanoV. One more device on air quality. There is a device called the Elanra that I've owned for a long time. And it is an effective tool. They have basically medical grade air ionization devices. And, people throw around the word ionization a lot. This thing, if you put an ORP in front of these little needles, it's off the charts. It'll measure minus 1500. So an ORP measures the oxidative or the antioxidative potential of whatever it's measuring. If you put it in normal tap water, it'll be like plus 200. If you're measuring Kangen water, it might be minus 200, minus 300. The oxygen molecules coming off this thing are minus 1500. It's a very powerful device. You can put that kind of next to your head, and it's a good enhancer. That and a good air purifier, you're going to get a really good air environment while you're sleeping, which I think boosts you. So yeah, those are all the fundamentals. Again, I don't recommend any of the PMF devices. The Faraday cage didn't really move the needle. Cooling pad, absolutely. And then sleep supplements, Sleep Breakthrough, Mag Breakthrough, and Dream Optimizer. There's your dream team for great sleep.
Yeah, that's it. That last one I wasn't familiar with. That's the first time I'm hearing about that. So we'll include links to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, it's spelled ELANRA, Elanra.
Perfect. So we covered almost every single sleep hack. There's so many. We absolutely covered the most important ones. So just to recap for everybody, just so they're not overwhelmed and they can come away with some action steps. What would your top 5 most important either rituals or supplements or protocols be for sleep? Top 5, what would you say?
Number one, you got to manage light. Again, we talked about it starts in the morning, and then it's 90 minutes before bed, and then it's absolute pitch black darkness while you're sleeping. That's number one. 2, get a great mattress. Like literally sell your car. I would sell on pretty much every materialistic asset I have before my sleep setup. Like there's no question about that. So invest in a good mattress. Again, do your homework. That's number 2. 3, you got to control temperature. And if your metabolism is hot, you pretty much have no choice but to get some sort of device like the Chilipad or the Sleep 8, whatever it's called, to help control that body temp. That's 3.
Or hack
4,
it. Or hack it with
go ahead.
the forehead ice towel or a cold shower before. So I don't think you have to get some product. I think there are natural ways to hack it, but yeah, definitely in the summertime, if you're a hot sleeper, for me, the Chilipad was phenomenal.
And the glycine helps.
Right.
Glycine helps, which is very cool, pun intended. Next is managing cortisol, which again, the main thing there is consistency. And again, if you look at the sleep data, like great sleep is ideally going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, and you're really hardwiring that. Again, you want to prevent that second wind, that cortisol spike that'll happen. Definitely don't eat before bed. And the last thing is managing your nervous system and your brain waves. Again, if you have hyperactive thoughts, if you're an ideation machine, if you've got, these worries that are floating through your brain, there's a lot of tools. I mean, the L-theanine, the pharma GABA will help, but that's where meditation or neurofeedback or the binaural beats, those are all things that I would strongly recommend you play with and try it and see which one works for you. But that's the last one.
Love it. Yeah, this was a very in-depth episode on sleep. I know people are going to get a ton of value from this because most people, from my experience that I talk to, are struggling with sleep, even if they think that they aren't, because they're not blocking blue light. They're staring at their screens. They're stressed out before bed. And like we mentioned, they're getting the 7 to 8 hours, but they still wake up groggy, have brain fog, fall asleep during the day. Sometimes there was a stat that 47% of people admit to falling asleep while driving in the past month, which is crazy. And I used to be there. Like when I was in the Marine Corps and I was sleep deprived and I would do these long drives, I would absolutely fall asleep. So yeah, it's scary. So if that's you, please, please, please do not put your life or anybody else's life in danger or your productivity in danger, because at the beginning we mentioned how crucial sleep is to literally every aspect of your life, testosterone levels, libido, um, yeah, reducing brain fog, productivity, all these things. Take these things into consideration, specifically the top 5 things that Matt just gave us at the end there. That's, baseline, start there. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, you're bringing me back to when I was in university and I had to drive half an hour from my home to go to university. And there was a lot of micro naps, and it's scary. I mean, again, only by the grace of God that I not crash and harm someone or worse. So yeah, and I spent 6 months in Japan. It was kind of freaky to see almost half the train at all time literally sleeping while they're standing, and somehow they would know which station to get out, and they'd wake up and then walk out. So yeah, most people are, again, sleep deprived, and they've adapted to it, which is not a good
Mm,
thing. Again, if you go from that to hyper optimized sleep, you just become a next level version of yourself. Like the best version of yourself is getting great sleep every night. So in my opinion, you become that person.
boom. Let's end it there. Matt, thank you for coming on the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. We'll do one last question that I like to end it with. What does thriving mean to you?
Mhm. Wow. I love that question. I've never heard that question before. Thriving means growth to me. I would say I'm addicted to growth, personal growth, business growth. Like I feel if I'm growing personally, if the business is growing, if this anything, whatever I'm involved in that I'm putting energy in is growing, that I'm thriving. Like to me, growing is definitely thriving.
So stagnation, not
I feel
good.
like I'm dying.
Yeah, agreed.
I do.
Agreed.
Psychologically, I feel like I'm just dying.
Agreed. All right. Thank you for coming on, dropping some
You're
wisdom
welcome.
about sleep.
Yeah.
Take it from a man who has built 13 profitable companies. Sleep is important. You can't achieve this level of success on horrible sleep quality, or just be like a zombie on autopilot. Right. So dial in the sleep. And yeah, Matt, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Yeah. Sleepbreakthrough.com/Captain Morgan. So that's the URL. We got a nice discount code for you guys. Of course, all of our products are protected by a 1-year, 365-day unconditional money back guarantee. So try Sleep Breakthrough, give it a shot. And if it doesn't work for you, just let us know and we'll give you every single penny back. That's it.
What more could you ask for? It's a win-win-win. You literally cannot lose. Love it.
That's it.